This is a Fleet Success Show, dedicated to helping you and your fleet succeed using the experience of fleet professionals and Hall of Fame fleet legends. The show that explores how the pillars of stakeholder satisfaction, intentional culture, resource efficiency, and risk management all combine to lead your fleet to success. We're glad you're here. Now, let's get into the show. Hey, welcome back for another episode of the Fleet Success Show with your hosts, Josh Turley, Marc Canton.
Hey, everybody.
It's awesome to be back in studio and back on the podcast. Took a little break over March for a little while.
Yes.
But it's been busy. We've been going through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We just had our Spirit Week. We're going to do an episode on that.
Yep.
But this last weekend, I know I just posted about this on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah.
We thought we'd do it live. Mark wants to hear about it. Josh went and did a little off-roading this weekend, and I'm very jealous.
and by like off-roading in this weekend, it was an entire weekend trip.
Right.
This is the second time I've done it, and I'm probably going to make this like an annual thing.
Cool.
But those who don't know, like we're down here in Arizona,
right,
which puts us in very close proximity to the legendary Baja California,
right,
which is south of the border, and it's over to the west coast, and it's where they have the Baja 1000. Right. They've got the San Felipe 250. And so there's a lot of off-road racing that happens, right? I'm going to say it's a little bit lawless because it's not the States.
Right.
And it's pretty much like anything goes. You're on these dirt roads and,
so cool.
It's very different for people that are back east. Like even coming out here to Arizona, we have a lot of free use. You can go out and pretty much go anywhere, which I've taken you out in the truck.
Yep.
And, it's radical, the kind of things we do.
It's cool.
The Baja is on a whole nother level.
Right.
So... yeah, so we thought we'd talk today about life lessons from the desert.
Yeah.
Right. Just some of the things whenever I go and do things, I'm always thinking about what's the takeaway.
Right.
Right. How do I apply this to life? What's the lesson I can learn from this? And I'm always looking for a deeper meaning. I don't know, maybe it's a character flaw and I should just be happy with being in the moment and experiencing something. But
I don't know.
I always like to think back and reflect after the moment. And this is true because in the moment, you're actually not thinking anything about like, oh shit, how do I get through this?
Right, exactly.
How do I keep the truck from crashing? But you get through the end of the day and, after the adrenaline settles a little bit, like, man,
then you're reflecting. Right.
It was just an amazing time. And I get a chance to kind of reflect on what are the life lessons that I learned from any of these experiences.
Right. So let me pause you for a second. I kind of want to like set some baseline. As you mentioned a bit about where we are, so as an East Coaster, like our off-roading is probably a little bit more like, rock and mud climbing and creek crossing where we can. And it's often snow is part of our experience there. So a little bit more like the folks up north from here, Colorado and up there, they do a lot of rock climbing, slow stuff. That's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about like full throttle, high speed racing in the dirt, in the mud, in the dunes and whatever else it may be. So a really cool thing, very different than what I think a lot of people experience. So let's pause on that. So that's pretty neat. And the other thing is you said something there that's really important, right? Because you went on vacation, right? This is what you chose to do.
Yeah.
And, I can relate to this, the skier in me, right? Like you said, you're like, oh shoot, what the heck am I going to do to keep this car from flipping over? That is so freeing, right? Yeah. So this is what like in that moment, if you're thinking about anything else, if you're thinking about that thing that on your honey-do list, if you're thinking about that thing you're worried about at work, you're going to crash the car.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. And so it's exhilarating, but it's awesome because for those moments, you are forced to only think about the thing that's right in front of you.
Yeah.
What a good cleanse, man. What a good cleanse.
Just a total mental cleanse.
Yes.
Right? And you get the adrenaline dump from it. And then you're like, whoa, that was awesome. But it's one of those things that it forces you. We call them forcing functions, right? When something forces you to do something that doesn't come naturally. And that's a forcing function to clear your mind and just totally be present in the moment, focusing on the task at hand.
Right.
And in this case, you're doing anywhere from 50 to 100 miles an hour on a dirt road. The task at hand is the next 50 to 100 feet in front of you.
Right, exactly.
Because, any little pothole, any little whoop, any little turn, any number of things, barbed wire fences everywhere. You just have to watch out for crap like that. I really racked the sidewall of my tire, totally popped it. Why? Well, because I couldn't see that rock jumping out at me. So you just constantly got to be aware and vigilant.
Right.
There's random people on the trails, there's random cars, and there's nothing more emasculating than here you are in this big old truck romping down, you're like, oh, I'm so awesome.
Yeah.
And then you're going down and like, here's a little Geo Metro on the same trail you are, just bouncing along, right? You feel terrible for them, but at the same time, you're like, oh, I guess I'm not that cool. So, but yeah, definitely, as I thought back on this last weekend, my favorite part of going down there is the people. The people are amazing. You really get to know like the Mexican people themselves, outside of the touristy areas of the country.
Sure.
And it is just very humbling. You really come to understand and be grateful for what we have here in the States, the rights, the protections that we have, due process, laws, things of that nature. It's just completely different. You take things for granted, like infrastructure. One of my favorite things was last year, and it's sad to say it, but I was learning that, they have their water turned off every 3 days, which is just, it's unfathomable to us.
Right.
That, what do you mean? You're like, you don't have clean drinking water? Yeah, no, you've got to have a cistern that you put the water into. Of course, those of us from the States, we can't drink the water down there because they don't do things like, chlorine, fluoride. They don't purify the water, which some people here don't like that, but hey, it lets you drink the water because down there it's a ton of bacteria. And so your gut has to get used to that. Otherwise, Montezuma's revenge is a real thing. Yeah. And you will not leave the toilet for a little while. Yeah. And so you don't drink the water. You take things for granted, like electricity and, steady state of electricity, things like standards. I love walking into a hotel or something like that in Mexico, and you'll reach for where the light switch should be. And here you don't, like, because of like codes and ADA and things like that, there's a standard height that all light switches are supposed to be at. We go to Mexico and it could be up at shoulder height. It could be down by your knees. The electrical outlets could be stacked up like one next to the other. Right. Like there's no standardization or codes usually. And so it's just kind of like whatever it takes to get the job done. Right. It's incredibly scrappy and inspirational. Yeah. But like you take some of these things for granted here in the States. Right. And so it's something that for me is always very humbling. It's very grounding. And you really just get to know how amazing these people are that are down there and they're just trying to get by. Right. And you see the worst of it too, though. There were several times we got pulled over and, naturally the local police, typically, what do they want? Dinero, cerveza. Right. It's one of those two things. So you have to kind of play dumb tourist and be like, no habla español, muy poquito. Like you just, you have to really kind of play the dumb gringo a little bit. But it's still fascinating just talking to him. Right. Probably the scariest thing that we had was we were driving through the forest up in the lake country and just humming along. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, we surprise a set of National Guardsmen, right? Which is like, this is the holdovers. If you remember, like the Federales, well, the Federales were corrupt, so they disbanded. Right. This is the new Federales, right? Well, we came up on these guys and they were not ready for us.
Scared the crap out of them. So what do? Defensive positions. The guy jumps up on his technical. He's got the 50 cal at the windshield of our lead truck. Right.
You want to talk about pucker factor. Let me tell you, when you get put at gunpoint of somebody who doesn't speak English, as pucker factor.
You have no way to talk your way out of it.
So the rest of us all kind of slow roll, but you get to looking at them and like these guys are just, you can tell they're just genuinely good people. And they come by each truck. They're like, hey, do you have a translator? Se habla español? Do you know Spanish? And they just kind of go through, they look through your stuff and they're like, all right, like you guys aren't a threat. Like, just keep on moving. But to watch them, like the first time we rolled in they're all fanning out tactical positions. They got their big old fin-foul rifles.
Right. And in fairness to them, they don't have any clue who you are, right? So they're just...
We could have been cartel for all they did.
Yeah, exactly. Right? They're just preparing to defend themselves. Right, yeah.
But yeah, that was probably one of the scarier moments. But we got through that. It was 5 minutes. I was like, all right, everything was fine. They were laughing and joking. Poor trigger discipline. We got to talk to them about that. When the sergeant looked like he was about ready to blow his foot off. But for the most part, it was a pretty pleasant experience. So one of the things is I posted about this on LinkedIn, but there's a lot of things that I learn being a part of this group. Just in like how to handle things in life, things that I learned from Baja that I have applied as a leader or, in my organization. And one of my favorites is actually around communication. Okay. So one of the things we do is we all have radios, UHF radios between all the trucks. And so we will sit there and communicate and, some of us have 110 watt radios, others it's 50. Some of us are using the 8 watt handhelds, right? And the power that you have dictates, your distance. How far can you transmit and things like that. But things like line of sight and how clear things are, and one of my favorite thing is just how quickly you have to communicate. And so what'll happen is the lead truck is going along, and their job is to call out hazards or call out things that the rest of the truck the truck line convoy needs to know about the trail.
Right.
If there's oncoming traffic, that's probably the biggest threat is oncoming traffic. There's really nothing worse than you're doing 80 miles an hour into a turn, and all of a sudden there's a car coming at you.
Right.
And so for us to stay safe, like, we have to be in constant communication up and down the line. And so as we pass something, truck one will call out, hey, truck one, make sure you stay to the left on this turn. There's a huge washout or something like that that's going to cause some damage to the truck, or there's oncoming traffic. And then truck two, as they pass the obstacle, truck two passed washout, truck three passed washout. And so every truck knows, like, hey, I'm truck four, truck three just passed this, it's next. And so you're just constantly staying in communication with one another throughout this entire process. Mm-hmm. And I think about us, we talk about this all the time with creating clarity. And this idea of over communicating clarity. And as leaders, we feel like, well, truck one called it out. I don't need to keep
saying
it out.
Right. You're almost fearful, right? You don't want to be annoying or sound like you're harping on something, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say something. What if somebody else needs to say something and I'm just saying the wrong thing,
right.
And so, but it just reminded me of just how important it is for us as leaders to over communicate clarity and just constantly repeat ourselves and tell ourselves, right? And then by the time you get to the end, we call the last guy sweep. And so the last truck driver they're kind of sweeping the course. They'll say, like, hey, sweep clear of obstacle or sweep clear of oncoming. And that helps us know that everybody got through safely, soundly, and we can move on to the next thing.
Right.
But it's that communication, that constant communication, and then closing that feedback loop that tells us we can move on.
Right.
So definitely one of the things, I've gone out with people that don't have radios. I was talking to James, like, he was on an off-road trail this same weekend in a different part of the country. And he was like, oh, no, we didn't have any radios between the group. It's like, how do you communicate to one another?
Right.
It's like, honestly, you drive what you can see. And
that's it.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you is that communication does come at a cost. It does allow you, maybe this is a good thing, but it allows you to move faster. If I didn't have that communication, then I would have to pretend that I was that lead truck every time. Mm-hmm. Right? And that lead truck, their job is to kind of get out far enough ahead of the group that they can go a little bit slower and drive a little more cautiously because they don't know what's coming around the head.
Right.
Nobody's telling them that there's an oncoming car.
Right.
They are the oncoming car.
Right.
And so for that lead truck, like, they need to be able to communicate back to the rest of the group very quickly.
Right.
But if you don't have that and you don't have that communication then every one of you has to kind of drive what you can see. And so for that, what ends up happening is you all go a little bit slower and you all drive a little more cautiously, which is probably a good thing, I guess. But in the end, it helps us stay a lot safer and a lot clearer about where we're going. Left-hand turns, that's another one. You're out there in the desert and you might have GPS. Hopefully everybody's got GPS map, but sometimes it stops working. Mm-hmm. It freezes. You don't have cell service.
Right.
You lose your GPS signal.
Right.
The iPad dies. Who knows? There's a million reasons why your map could suddenly be wrong. And all of a sudden you've got a left and a right turn to make. You got to know which way to go.
Right.
So one of the things we'll do is we'll hold a left or hold a right. And the truck in front of you will hold the turn until you get there. You get there, and then you hold the turn until the truck behind you comes.
Right.
And so, it's another way that we help communicate and, communicate changes in the course, things like that. We had one, we were coming across, and the map had us going through, and we show up, and all of a sudden the field's flooded. Like, there's no way through this road. And so all of a sudden we had to follow a different course, and we had to communicate that up and down the ranks. Mm-hmm. And so your ability to communicate is what's going to allow your team to go faster, to execute, and to, when things change, to be able to adapt to the changing circumstances and move on to the next challenge.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, what a beautiful analogy, right? Not only to work for sure, but really to life, if you think about it. Yep. It's even bigger than that, right? That's interesting. Really cool. And it's applicable, I can't imagine, right? It's applicable at sort of the company level. Yeah. It's applicable at the department level, the little individual working unit level, right? Over communicate, make sure there's clarity, and it'll let you go faster. It's kind of like the way to accomplish 2 heads are greater than 1 and 3 heads are greater than 1, kind of a thing, right? Yep. Like, or what's the expression? You're better with the cliches than I am. The many hands makes light work or something like that. Is that what it is? It's the same idea there. That's really interesting. It's funny because again, I think the folks on the podcast know. Many cheeseburgers ago, I was an avid skier. I love off-piste skiing, skiing the trees. And we apply almost the exact system that I'm listening to you describe. We would So the person in front's job was to scout. We would call it out. Ice patch, no snow, right?
Did you guys have radios or anything?
Yeah, we didn't have radios. We were literally screaming
signals?
in the woods. Yeah.
You just turn behind you and you're yelling at things. That's funny.
Exactly. Yeah, we would scream. And so there are other folks, though, who do have radios and even better than we were, right? Yep. And they have the radios here and they have the tile just like the patrol guys do. Yep. So you'll see that for sure. And and we did do like little waves that kind of said what we want. And we would pause and hold turns, exactly what you said, so that you kind of know, because you get on the side of these mountains and you can go anywhere, Yep. So it's kind of interesting, neat. It's different, but it's, the concept's very similar. It sounds like basically the same thing. So pretty cool stuff. How did you decide where to rest?
So where to rest, it would typically be flat spots, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't want to rest on the side of a mountain.
Right.
And by rest, do you mean like stay at hotels or just like take breaks?
Take a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take a break was basically you get to kind of the end of a section. You kind of feel it as just, hey, we're almost about to get onto a paved road. Those are usually great times to stop and kind of regroup. If we got too far stretched out, right? So something that the lead truck and sweep are constantly listening to is how far between the trucks, right? So when you hear things like truck 1 passed, wash out on the right, and then within 2 seconds, truck 2 wash out on the right. That means they're really close together.
Right.
And then if there's a huge long gap, 30 seconds, a minute, you know that truck 3 is about a minute behind truck 2.
Right.
And that means that truck 4, and you just kind of add it up and you realize that, very quickly, like we're 5 minutes
spread
apart.
Out. Right.
And at 60 miles an hour, 5 minutes is 5 miles.
Right.
The big powerful radios, they'll go 10 miles, not a problem. But the weaker radios will actually start having a hard time hearing each other beyond probably 5 to 10 miles of mountainous range.
Right.
And so you have to start worrying about communication now. Now people are having to relay messages to each other, which slows down communication. It's going to slow down the group. And so you'll tell the lead truck like, hey, slow down a little bit, or let's regroup at the next turn.
Right.
And so you just kind of try to regroup, get everybody back together, and then you go on.
Right.
Things break. Things, like you have to take breaks for, hey, next time, can we do a potty break or something like that?
Right.
And so somebody will just call out the next stop we get. And so truck 1, their job is just find somewhere flat, find somewhere that's, easy. It's got a lot of visibility.
Right.
Easy. You don't want to be stopping on the other side of a hill because then everybody's going to slam into the back.
You get off the road far enough that someone doesn't come up behind you. Yeah.
So we look at things like that. Petrol breaks, so we'll look for gas and things of that nature. Like, where does it make sense to fuel up? And almost always it's centered around the pavement. Like when you get back to pavement, usually right before or after, you find a good spot to kind of stop and take a break for a second.
Okay. Because obviously you have a lot more experience than I do doing it, but for folks who've never done it, like, they may not understand, like, you're driving, but it's tiring. Like, it's physically tiring, right? Yes. Like it's a lot of work.
The speeds we're doing and depending on the terrain, right? If these are just Forest Service roads and they're smooth,
right,
it's different as bad, right? But when you're dealing with the type of obstacles and the terrain that we're in, that steering wheel is going left and right faster than you can, and you're fighting it.
Yeah.
And you're fighting the throttle and you're tensed up and you're like,
right, because you're literally fighting
yourself. Yeah. And so, we're not running 5-point harnesses or anything like that.
Because no one goes to school for fleet management, chances are you were never formally trained on how to successfully lead a fleet. That's where the Fleet Success Playbook comes in. The Fleet Success Playbook is your guide to building a safe, reliable, and efficient fleet that provides exceptional service. Learn all about the 4 pillars of fleet success: stakeholder satisfaction, intentional culture, resource efficiency, and risk management. Get nearly 100 years of combined advice on common challenges, practical solutions, actionable tips, and real examples from fleet industry experts who have been there and done that. Visit www.fleetsuccessplaybook.com to request your free copy today.
There was, we call it the 10 miles of suck. There was a section just south of Ensenada, and it's part of the NORA course, it's part of the Baja 1000. And it's just extremely technical and slow. And you get to the end of that and you're just like, I feel beat up. I've got a headache.
Right.
This is only 10 miles, and like I didn't have a helmet on or anything. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is rough. It earned the 10 miles of suck moniker. Let me tell you that. But it is one of those things that you get out and your hands are tired. Like they literally ache.
Right.
And I'm not even driving a trophy truck. I'm driving a very nice, like it's an F-150.
Right.
And it's plush and comfortable and AC and all that stuff.
Right.
But it's like riding a bike. It hurts sometimes.
Yeah. It'll get to you. Yeah. So what's the lesson there, Josh? what are we thinking, right? Like at some point you need to rest, right?
And you got to pay attention to your body. I think that's there's a lesson there, which is, pay attention to your body, pay attention to your energy levels, paying attention to, your fatigue and things like that. And, if it gets to the point that you can't hold onto the steering wheel, you're now a threat to the rest of the course.
Right.
And so you got to call out and be willing to admit like, hey, next spot we get, can we take a quick break? I need 5 minutes to stretch my legs a little bit.
Right.
And I think the lesson there is, hey, don't be too proud to ask for that. Everybody needs it. And as a leader, sometimes I think we can get to that mindset that we don't need the break.
Yeah.
That we can go forever, that we're the Iron Man, that we can put all the weight on our shoulders. Exactly. Wait for somebody else to ask for it. I'm not going to be that guy.
Right.
I don't want to come off as, right. So we have this goes to our 5 dysfunctions, right? But we have this need for invincibility. Right. This aura of like, we are perfect and we will never falter.
Right.
And that's usually when we end up making a big mistake, or we put it in the ditch, or any number of things can go wrong. Yeah. It's just because we're not paying attention. We're not fatigued. We're fatigued.
Yeah. And you're not only putting yourself at risk, you're putting your whole team at risk in this case. Yep. And then oftentimes it goes well beyond the team, right? Because everyone on the team now has their circles of life, their family, their friends, their wives, their husbands, their kids, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and you don't want to break down on the trail, right? That's, it happens, but you really want to try to avoid breaking down on the trail. And so if you're getting tired or something like that, like just know you're likely to make a mistake. Right. So we try to pull that back a little bit. Right. But that's the other thing. So you talk about putting your co-driver at risk or putting your team at risk. Mm-hmm. When we break down, we're all broken down, right? So if one guy has a break, like we're all broken down until we can get that person back on the road, because you can't leave them behind. Right. What are you going to do? Leave them behind in Mexico?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, and that kind of enables us to know is that we can trust each other and we'll figure it out together. You talked about, 2 heads are better than one, and we often will group solve problems. Mm-hmm. I mentioned we had this guy who he actually shattered his leaf springs. Wow. Right. Now there's 60,000 miles on these leaf springs, and they're aftermarket, but he's put them through their paces, and they've gotten all 60,000 miles of them out of them. But one of the leaves broke in 2 different spots, right? Before and after the axle. Wow. Yeah, wow is right. Right. And this, I want to say it was probably like the 3rd leaf in the pack. There's 5 leaves, and this was number 3. And then the overload spring broke in 2 spots.
Oh my gosh. What did he hit? What did he do?
I have no idea. We just noticed we pulled into our restaurant, like our lunch stop, and his truck was sagging much more than usual. And so sure enough, we jack it up and take a look at it, and it's like you can see where the 2 cracks are. The leaves have actually shifted about an inch. Wow. North and south, right? He didn't even notice that the overload spring was broken until much later. We figured that out later that night. But I've got pictures of it, and it's like clearly broken. It's fascinating. But he's broken down. He's not driving anymore, right? Until we can get him back on the road, and we can't leave this car there. So now we got to figure out the fix. How do we do this? Are we close enough to a town where we can go in and go get parts? Or do we have parts with us? And ideally, we've got parts with us. Right. A lot of us bring extra parts. I had like upper A arms and tie rods. Tie rods are one of the most common things to fail. Yeah. So a lot of people have tie rods. But we go through and we have several of these different things that we can do trail fixes. Well, he just happened to, as he was leaving his garage, this is the kind of stuff that we do. He realized, he's like, oh, I've got these 2 front axles, one left and one right. I think I want to bring those just in case. I don't know if I'm going to need them, but just in case, I want to bring them. And so he packed these 2 axles, but he was trying to figure out, how do I secure them he had a roof rack on his truck. He's an overlander guy. He's like, how do I secure these things? And so he's like, well, I've got these 2 U-bolts, they happen to fit his leaf springs, but he's like, I've got these 2 U-bolts. I'll secure them to the roof rack with my U-bolts. And so he cranked them down and they were totally secure. But we're sitting here trying to fix his leaf springs, and he realized like, oh, well, actually, I've got these U-bolts that I can use. And so we were able to clamp it down, get him back on the road. Now, obviously, he was done running hard the rest of the trip. Yeah. He's got to take it easy. And so he ran really slow behind the rest of us. And then what happens is truck 1, we all get out way in front, and then we stop and pause and wait for him to kind of catch up. Right. But yeah, he didn't do any of the jumps, anything like that after, because now he's got to get home to America to actually fix the truck. And that's the whole point. Like when we're down there, the goal isn't necessarily a race. It's not to win. This is just a bunch of group of friends having fun.
It's the journey itself.
Yeah. One day it'd be fun to race. Yeah. But that's like when you have a whole team and chase trucks and pit stops and all that stuff. Yeah. But this is not that. Right. so the journey then becomes all of us together getting back home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we all go out here, we're all going to have fun, we're going to do amazing things, but we got to all get back home.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him, you know, we were able to secure it up, move the leaf springs back into position, and we, you know, got them back up another 2 or 3 inches. It wasn't to where it should have been, but it was good enough.
But it worked.
That overload spring, I have no idea where it went, by the way. It just is gone. And so he definitely was sagging for a little while. But we were only able to do that because he was prepared enough.
Right.
And he just happened to have these U-bolts in his kit. And we had to
Amazing.
figure out a different way to secure the axles after that. But much rather have that problem than not have these U-bolts at all.
Right. Yeah.
So there's definitely an element, you know, from a life lesson there is be prepared.
Right.
You know, think about what could happen. We talk about risk management as one of the pillars of fleet success.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about what could happen, what's likely to happen, what wouldn't you survive, you know, above the line, below the line water risk. And how do you plan and mitigate for that kind of thing?
Right.
I don't think he anticipated shattering leaf springs.
Right.
But he just happened to have the parts that he needed in order to make that repair.
Right. To at least get back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really all we try to do is like at least get back to a main road. Worst case, like we all have Ride Baja insurance. And so if we need to get towed back across the states, we can, but you have to be on a road in order to do that.
Right.
So those are some of the things that we've kind of learned. But then the other piece was that, you know, there's no person left behind, right? And when you think about in your team, in your organization, if you have somebody struggling, you're all struggling, you know, and I loved this concept because it really reinforced for me something we do at work, which is team number one, this idea of team number one. When we come into a room, you know, all the executives, you know, you're the head of product, James is over engineering, you've got, you know, Kevin and Ryan over sales and marketing. But when we come into a room and as executives, the hats all come off and we are team number one. If we have a sales problem, right, it's not Kevin's sales problem.
Right.
It's Mark's and Josh's and James and Jacob's. Like it's all of our sales problem.
Right.
So how do we fix this together? Right. This guy broke his leaf springs. Well, it's not his leaf springs. It's our leaf spring. How do we get our truck back up on the road?
Right.
So that way we can all get back home.
Right.
But I really liked it. It was kind of an instance where life really showed you what it looked like to have a true team number one where, you know, we're not moving unless we're all moving.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
You literally have to apply it quite literally. Otherwise everybody's in danger. Yeah. It's pretty neat when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, so this probably has no life lesson. But my favorite thing to do in Baja with my truck is drag race on the beach.
Okay.
Right. It's not drag racing on a tarmac or strip or anything like that. So it's a little bit slower.
Right.
But man, I tell you what, that sand is so smooth that, you know, it's easy to get up and do 100, 115 miles an hour and just, it feels weird.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel fast. Like it feels fast.
Right.
Don't get me 115 is fast. But
you do this and it's
but the sand is just so soft and smooth and there's no like, you know, cracks in the pavement or anything like that you're feeling. Like the truck's not fighting you at all. It's just, you know, if anything, like the truck might fight you because it's getting into a groove.
right.
But if, you know, it's like almost being on rails because it just goes straight. But that is probably my favorite thing. And it's just peaceful and relaxing and things. And there's nobody on the beach.
Right.
And the sand is super soft, you know, and because of the tidal effect, like it's actually somewhat hard packed because of the water inside of it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's probably my favorite thing to do down there is just, you know, do high speed passes on the beach.
Yeah.
And you know, don't get me wrong, I love the rest of it. Running whoops, you know, there's something incredibly adrenaline inducing when you're doing, you know, you're trying to get up on top of a set of whoops. Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what whoops are, we call them whoops because it's like they make you go whoops. They're basically like, you know what washboards are, right? Which is just, you know, rivets and like dips and stuff like that in the roads.
Right.
Well, whoops are just big washboards.
Right.
Right. They've been formed by wind and rain and all this stuff. And depending on the size of the whoop, depends on how fast you have to go to get on top of it.
Right.
You know, if you drive faster over washboards, it's smoother.
Right.
But you also run the risk because you're driving fast, you're only getting half the traction because the rest of it's in the dip. Right. And so you have to be careful on turns and things like that. But yeah, you just kind of have to pace it. So sometimes you'll be going and I'll be like, okay, I got to get ahead of these whoops. Right. And so you can feel the rhythm feeding back to you through the truck. And if you start feeling yourself kind of bucking back and forth, then it's like, all right,
you know, have a problem.
Hammer down,
right?
Get on top of them or slow down. Like you can't do this thing.
Middle.
You can't be in the middle. You have to go faster or slower, one or the other.
Right.
And so in most cases, you just can go faster and you'll get up on top of them and it's going to freak you out. But you realize, okay, I'm in control. Like I'm not bucking all around. I'm skipping across the top of the dirt. And as long as you're not on a turn, you're probably going to be okay.
Right.
So you just kind of have to read the terrain, hit the brakes on the throttle, like, and just go back and forth. But every once in a while, you're going to hit some whoops. We call them trophy truck size whoops. Trophy trucks, like, so my Raptor, for example, 37-inch tires. It's a fairly decent truck. It's, one of the best production trucks ever made, if not the best. But a trophy truck has, anywhere from 5 to 10 more inches of travel.
Right.
40-inch tires typically.
Right. It's got a big lift, big tires.
Crazy suspension.
Right.
Raptors are amazing. Trophy trucks are just a whole nother level.
Right.
And so, but you'll hit some of these that are 2 or 3 feet tall. You're not getting on top of those with the Raptor.
Right.
And so you just have to slow down and buck up, because it's literally just like being on a carnival ride.
Right.
And just bouncing up and down on these things. But if you try to go too fast, like, you will absolutely smash your truck into smithereens.
Right.
So you just have to read the terrain, and you got to watch it. And so if there's a life lesson there, one, it's the map is not the terrain. It's one of my favorite Covey sayings. Stephen Covey said this all the time, which is that a lot of times we'll think like, oh, well, here's our map, here's our goal, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. And we get so focused, we talk about like managing through a spreadsheet. We get so focused on the numbers or on the data or on anything that's in front of us that's like an artificial representation of reality,
right,
like a map, that we forget to actually read the terrain and realize that the terrain changes.
Right.
The terrain gets a vote. And so when you're a fleet manager and your boots are on the ground, like, you've got to walk around, you've got to feel things, you've got to see things, and you have to adapt in real time. Like, just because the spreadsheet says it's going to work, it still takes execution. It still takes you making it happen and having the face-to-face conversation with somebody to make it happen. Right. So we often say, like, the map is not the terrain. Don't let the map tell you the right way to do things. Let it be an input, but you have to read the terrain and you have to drive it.
Right.
You have to feel the feedback of the road through all the other inputs.
Yeah. So. And it's going to tell you a lot about where you need to put your energy, what kind of work you need to do. I mean, and again, the analogy here is wonderful, right? Like, if I'm trying to get from point A to point B and I'm on a beautifully paved road, that's going to be a very different experience than I'm on maybe a sandy beach or any other kind of terrain, right? It's going to completely change
all of that detail too.
Correct. Right. And so you have all that, but it completely changes the entire journey and the entire experience of it, and how much effort you need to put in to get there, right? Yeah. How much time it's going to take to get there. It's a fascinating analogy. I like that one a lot because, it reminds me of something, we say a lot. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Right? The map's giving you, you have this, these are the plans, I'm going from A, B, but there's all this stuff in the middle that you got to figure that out, right? Yeah. That's an interesting thought. I mean, let's be honest, though. There's another piece that you love to do.
For sure.
Because I've been watching. And you love to jump.
That truck is so smooth.
You love to jump.
Yeah.
This time you got a picture that, God help me, Ford should be asking you to buy from you. Like, it looks like a freaking marketing picture out of like they're advertising the off-road capabilities of this Raptor. It is
too.
Gorgeous with the sun coming down in the background and like the coloring. Like, it does not look like a real person's picture. It really doesn't.
I mean, I took some real person pictures of this jump, right? Like, there was 8 of us on this trip. And so I got some good pictures, and I wasn't even the highest. I got some pictures of the guy doing the highest, and he sent it. But yeah, no, that truck, like that, we had a professional photographer with us. He was my co-driver on this trip. And so he got pictures of all of us coming off this jump. And it's, I hit that probably about 65 miles an hour. It's just a little lip.
Wow.
And enough to pop all the wheels up. We probably got, 3-4 feet in the air.
At least.
I think the other guy probably got 5 or 6.
Wow.
Like, he was
up there.
Yeah, we talked about going to the moon. He was trying to get on Elon's space program or something. But yeah, there's just, it's something that I like to do. And it's crazy, because you do it and you're nervous and you can feel that adrenaline jump, and then you do it and you're like, why? You're regretting all of your life's decisions to get to that point. But I will tell you, like, these trucks are so magical because you land, and like, there's no joking. Like, when you're up at 4 feet in the air, when you land, you're going to bounce a little bit.
Of course.
But they're so dialed in that they usually just soak it up. One little bounce, and then you just keep cruising.
Right.
They're built for this kind of thing.
Right.
And so everybody asked me, they're like, oh my gosh, what happened to the truck? I was like, nothing.
Yeah.
That's what it was designed for.
Exactly.
Maybe not like repetitive 4 or 5 foot jumps, but it'll handle a few in its lifetime for sure.
There you go.
And so
They should probably pay you for
thing.
this podcast.
They
What
totally
an endorsement
should.
of the Raptor.
I feel like Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you ever heard Dave Ramsey say that. He's like, hey, what you should do is go buy yourself a Ford Raptor. But it is, and I think that, have we ever caught air in my truck?
Yes. Yeah, we did.
So it's just one of those things that you go find, like there's some good little spots. Even if it's 1 or 2 feet, like it feels, you feel weightless.
Yeah.
It's a very novel experience.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the fact that truck just handles it, and like you don't even blink, it just moves,
keep going.
it's smooth. It's, in my post I talked about, hey, like sometimes life's going to throw you a jump and it doesn't give you as many as it should, right? But when it does, take it, hit it at 65, enjoy the moment, and just let your wheels hang down, right? Like it's one of those things that when it comes, be grateful for it. Yeah. Take advantage of it. And then look back and look at the picture and be like, and just smile.
That was awesome. What an experience.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would argue, use that adrenaline bump that you get, right? Because when you land that puppy, when you do come down, you're just pumped up, right? You're pumped. Like you feel like you can do anything.
Totally. Well, as long as you land it right. Because a lot of people make the mistake of not lifting off the throttle when they jump. Right. Well, as soon as you go airborne, what happens? There's no resistance. Right. And so your wheels spin up to speed, and then all of a sudden you hit, and what happens is you lose traction. People flip because they aren't lift, right? So we have it grained in our head. When you jump, we jump in 2-wheel drive. We try not to jump in 4. But when you jump in 2-wheel drive, lift. Right. It's like get your foot off the throttle. Right. When you come down, it land, let it coast, and then get on the throttle again. Right. Yeah. So, yeah. But it is. You just got to kind of relax and enjoy it. And then you're like, that was awesome. That was awesome. Right? And then, if you're towards the front of the train, you get out of the truck and then you go run back so you can get some picture of the next guy coming through. Right. Which, I got some pretty awesome pictures. But it's one of those things that it's tough to describe to people who haven't done it. But Baja itself has a mystique. And it's one of these things that I really connect with, and I just love doing it. And so, my last takeaway is you have to find things that you really connect with, that you really enjoy doing. Some people that's golfing on the weekends. Some people it's, going out skiing. Right. But you find a thing that you really connect with. And for me, this started, I was probably 17, 18. Oh no, it was after that. It was after high school, just after high school. And there was this movie called Dust to Glory that came out. And it was all about the Baja 1000 and just, what we call the Baja mystique. And just no matter what happens in life, it was just kind of like, yeah, that's Baja. And the connections you form, the people you meet. Yep. The dust I totally relate to this. Yep. That's Baja. It's pretty magical. And so for me, when I am now as an adult, almost 40-year-old adult, going back and for 20 years, this has been something I've been passionate about, to go and actually run these race courses that I've seen on TV and to be a part of that history, to be a part of the, the land down there. It's mystique. It's magical for me. Yeah. And you kind of touched on something that I was hearing from you, but you feel like a kid. You have a few moments where you feel like a kid again, right? Yeah. And that's good for you. That's healthy. It's like an 8-year-old, right? Like, I don't remember if you remember when you were 8, did you ever set up like jumps with your bike? Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. Yes. Like you get a little piece of plywood. And you got like 3 inches and you thought, like, oh my God, I'm flying. Oh my gosh, I'm there. Right. And that's all this is. It's just, it's bigger kids, bigger toys, I guess. Yeah. That's, you kind of connect with that inner child and you give that inner child some love, and it's pretty awesome. It's good for your soul. It's good for your soul. Yes. So. I agree. Yeah. So there's a lot today. Let's see if we can put together some bullets for folks to take away here, right? So number one, we need rest, right? Yep. We need to know when we need rest, and may not get the right order here, but super important. You got to be able to admit when you need rest, have the humility to do it. Don't wait for someone else to do it. If you're tired, there's a good chance someone else is tired too, by the way. So we got that. We got this, when you are going to rest, picking a good place and a good spot to do it. For us skiers, it was, we'd go crazy when people would stop at the lip of a steep right in the center of the run. And, we would just wanted to kill them. Like, man, I got all the momentum here. Like, let's go. Just move over to the side, please. Right. Yes. So, similar concept there. You got to communicate. Got to communicate, right? So how important communication is for the entire team, repeating that communication, making sure that the clarity is there, how it impacts, understanding how the communication, but really all of your decisions and actions impact yourself, your immediate team, your larger team, right? Over and over again. We have this part we just talked about, right? The healthiness, this tying to your soul of feeling like a kid again. It's important to do that every so often, right? And I don't know what the magic number is,
but you usually know when you need it. One time you told me I need it, Mark, go. But you
I
can
remember that. That was actually. I was like, dude, you're looking a little stressed lately. When's the last time you went skiing?
Yeah,
right? It's like a Betty White commercial. Hey, when's the last time you had you ate something? You sounded kind of hangry.
Right, exactly. So if you're like a ball of stress or that yarn wound up, I don't know what the right answer is, but you're probably too late, right? So it's something that everybody, should be doing, feeling like that kid. And man, at every stage of life, because it gives you this reset, right? You talked about being in the moment, right? And how important that is. Otherwise, you miss it, right? If you're not focused on what you're doing right here and right now, you miss it, and more than likely, you're going to screw it up.
Yeah, it could cause a really big problem, or best case scenario is you just don't get to enjoy it. The worst case scenario is you destroy something in the process.
Right.
So.
Right, which is...
And hopefully not your family, because that's usually what, we do this at the expense of. We talk about our work and our lives and all that stuff, but we end up getting caught up and not focusing on the things that matter most that you only get one shot at.
That are right in front of us.
Yeah. I'd say, the last piece was team number one.
Team number one.
That, if one of us is broken down, we're all broken down.
Yeah.
If one part of the business isn't working, if one part of the fleet's not working, if one part of the shop's not working, the entire shop's not working.
Right.
And we have to all focus on that one problem together.
Yeah. And you can only go as fast as that slowest member, right? So that's a real interesting part. We don't leave anyone behind.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of good takeaways. I like this. I like this reflection here.
Fascinating. The things you learn off-roading in Baja. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come in, ask me some good questions.
Yeah, we've missed you in studio here. It's nice to be together again.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I'd be happy to go back down to Baja anytime. So if anybody wants to be a co-driver, hit me up. Let me know.
Yeah.
I'm, interested in taking you down. But otherwise, we will see you next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on LinkedIn or leave a review. Want to learn more about our fleet management software, Fleet 360? Check us out at rtafleet.com. If you want to learn more about having your fleet evaluated by our consulting team, go to fleetconsulting.com.